Today's episode of the Our Hen House podcast is being sponsored by our partner, A Well-Fed World. A Well-Fed World is a hunger relief and animal protection organization chipping away at two of the world's most immense, unnecessary, and unconscionable forms of suffering. The suffering of people hungry from lack of food, and the suffering of animals used and abused for food. Mending our unjust food system is a critical part of solving the world's most destructive and persistent problems. Fortunately, the plant-based foods that promote health and well-being are the same foods that conserve resources to better feed the world, while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and protecting the environment. A well-fed world provides the means for change by empowering individuals, social justice organizations, and political decision-makers to embrace the benefits of plant-based foods and farming. Learn more at awfw.org.
Hi, everybody. This is Jasmine Singer with a podcast dedication, coming all the way from Sydney, Australia. Elizabeth, who is one of our Antipodean listeners, wants to dedicate this episode to her boyfriend to celebrate 18 years since their first date. This episode is being released on March 11th, and the anniversary is coming up in just a couple days, so here's to the next 18 years together. Thanks so much for that, Elizabeth, and Mazel Tov. I love it.
Our hen house is a squawking house. Our hen house is their hen house. Our hen house, ooh, it's a funky fresh house. Our hen house is your hen house.
Welcome to our hen house. This is Mariann Sullivan. Thanks so much for joining us today. You're going to love the show. I really think you will. My guests are amazing. Kip Anderson and Keegan Kuhn, and you probably remember them as the filmmakers behind Cowspiracy, which I'm sure many of you have seen. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And they're just coming out with their new movie, What the Health, and it really is, it's the Cowspiracy of the health not-for-profit world. It just rips the lid off of the world of all of these health not-for-profits who are giving us so much bad information and really revealing how everybody is in cahoots with each other. It's a great movie. They are great guys, and this is a great interview, so stay tuned for that. Jasmine is going to be joined by one of the most unbelievably driven grassroots activists we have come across in a long time. Ryan Phillips, he's an artist. He's also, shall we say, a demonstrator. He puts his body out there every day to speak the truth about animals. Sometimes he goes out there with others, sometimes on his own, and you're going to really be fascinated and inspired to hear about some of his experiences in confronting the world with the truth about what's happening to animals. And before we get to that, I'd just like to discuss a letter we got from a listener a while back. I apologize for not getting to it sooner. And it brings up an issue that I think is so important and that we all end up confronting sooner or later, and which we don't necessarily have good answers for. It's from Katie in Maine, and here is what she had to say. Okay, so I'm having a moral dilemma, and you two are my favorite no BS vegans. Thank you, Katie. So I'm enlisting your help. I listen to your podcast all the time, and I need to ask you a question. My local hardware store here in Maine sells baby chicks in the spring, which in of itself breaks my heart. But my dilemma is now I was just in there yesterday, and there were 5 or 6 chicks left, getting kind of big for the cage, looking so sad. Ugh. So my instinct was to get them the hell out of there ASAP. I'm sure I could figure out how to raise chickens and get my dog to love them. But if I buy those poor chicks, won't the hardware store see the sellout of chicks as a success and buy more next year? But if I leave them, I'm not sure of their fate. Even if someone buys them, they might end up on their plate or for egg production, right? Help with some insight, please. As I said, this is an issue that we all confront, maybe not with chickens at the hardware store, but with some animal or another, and it comes up for almost everybody at one point or another. Should you, quote unquote, rescue an animal who is definitely in harm's way, if rescuing means paying money to the abuser and then leading to more animals to be put in that position. And I think there's an easy answer in a way, but I don't think the easy answer answers all of the questions. The quick answer and the right answer, I would say, is no, you shouldn't. I think, Katie, you are completely right that the hardware store will simply get more, or will see this as a success, and next season order even more chickens, and the store will make more money, and the hatchery will make more money, and more chicks will be churned out, and it might just be a small part of the industry, but you will be, just as every vegan decides not to participate even in a small way, you will be participating in that process. And some chicks are going to end up in the places you don't want these chicks to end up in. And they're going to end up either not being sold at all, or being killed by the store owner, being sold for egg production, ending up, these chicks at least are in a hardware store, so I guess there's a possibility that they will end up in some place that's not as horrifying as a factory farm, but still, the harm we're doing by supporting the industry not only erases the good we would be doing if we bought these chicks, it probably does even greater harm because it's perpetrating the system. And so that is the easy answer. And, we tell people not to buy pets from pet stores. And loads of people I have heard have bought some dog from a pet store because they looked unhappy and they were scared that something bad was going to happen to them. And bad things do happen to them. If they get too big, they can end up being killed, or they can be bought by people. There we're not as worried about them being bought for nefarious purposes, but there's even controversy in the Chinese dog markets between the activists who buy dogs and rescue them and the activists who don't, and say that supports this horror. Sanctuaries too. They've long struggled with these issues. Sanctuaries get it's hard to get animals out of factory farms, and so they get animals from all sorts of different places, and they totally try their best to persuade abusers to give up animals rather than paying for them. But that's not always that easy to do. So, easy answer, but there's always a but, isn't there? I never have an easy answer for anything. Clarity is not my forte. So on the other hand, there is something about that process where we go into that's never happened to me. My hardware store doesn't sell chickens, but we go into the hardware store, or something happens that we're confronted, even if it's not a purchase, even you just see an animal on the street, when you are confronted with an animal who is in need, and it calls to you. And it doesn't happen with every animal I see. I know some people have that rescuer's eye. I don't see animals all over the place, thank God. And but when I do, and sometimes it's eye contact, and you see that they are in need, and it sinks in, and it calls to you, and you are driven to help that animal. And I am not going to be the person to criticize anyone who gives into that impulse, because that is what we are all about. And we all know that there are billions and billions of animals in desperate need right at this moment, and there's absolutely no reason why we should be singling out this particular animal just because we've seen them. We certainly don't have the ability to get to all of the animals in need, but if we wanted to, we could probably get to a whole lot of them. We could go down to the shelter. There'd be loads of animals there who are in desperate need. There's a lot of animals that we could save right at this moment if we decided to devote our day to saving animals. And why should we focus just on this animal that we happen to see? And, obviously we can't save all those animals that we could save. We probably don't have the resources. It's way too big. We would drown in the need to care for them. If you've seen Year of the Dog, one of my favorite movies, you know that's kind of what she falls into, and I love her for it. But she ends up with a crazy, overwhelming situation, and for you, Katie, it sounds like you don't have any idea how to care for chickens, and you might not be well prepared to care for chickens, and you're not absolutely sure that you can get your dog to decide not to eat these chickens. So, there are enormous problems in just saying, well, we have to rescue them because they're in need. Well, that doesn't make any sense. There are a lot of animals in need, and we can't rescue all of them. But getting back to the point, when we were put in a situation where we look an animal in the eye, or that animal calls to us in some way and that animal needs help, answering that call is part of the best part of us. And it's just the very best part of any of us who care about animals is the part that looks at an animal in need and says, okay, I have to do something. And even if that isn't the perfect, strategic, sensible thing, I think that we are answering the call of the very best of our nature. And we live in an insane world. Animal agriculture, all of the other horrors of the world that we live in puts us in this insane, contradictory, untenable position that the need is so overwhelming that we feel wrong in answering this call inside of us. But sometimes you have to. I really understand that. Sometimes you have to, and all we can each do is our best. And while there are a million reasons not to buy those chicks, and I completely respect the decision not to, if one does buy them, I completely respect that decision too, and I totally understand. And I think that when you do, and you are aware that you have, in doing so, contributed to the growth of an industry, which is horrible, and so it's not a clean decision of all good and all perfect. You can try to make it worth it. You can look at those chickens every day and let them remind you of why you are here and what you are fighting for and what you can do to get that hardware store to stop selling chickens, or any other activism you can do. So, I know that was all over the lot, and it really wasn't clear. I don't think there's a clear answer here. There's just never a clear answer when it comes to animals. Our emotions pull us to do things that our heads tell us are not necessarily the most sensible thing in this crazy world. But that's the best I can do. So let's get to our interview, which I think will be much clearer than I am. I know it will be. Kip Anderson and Keegan Kuhn, you will recall, co-produced Cowspiracy, The Sustainability Secret. And that movie really became an overnight viral success. And because it was so successful on this grassroots level, Kip was invited to speak in front of the European Parliament. And then a new cut, which was executive produced by Leonardo DiCaprio, was released on Netflix. And so the movie got really enormous amounts of attention. Kip is also the founder of Ohm Films, that's AUM, and Ohm Films and Media, which is a not-for-profit focused on creating films and media that promote thrivability, compassion, and harmony for all life. And Keegan is a videographer, award-winning documentary filmmaker, and professional musician. And he's also the owner and operator of First Spark Media, which is a digital film production company tailored to creating films for social justice. These are two great guys. You're going to love hearing from them. And they'll be joining me right after this.
Please like us. Check us out on social media and follow, do whatever you need to do to keep us on your radar. On Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we are at Our Hen House, all one word. Also, you can find us online at ourhenhouse.org. And if you want to get in touch with us, or if you have any questions, or if you have any quandaries that you want us to consider addressing on the air, you can email us at info@ourhenhouse.org. Welcome to Our Hen House, Kip and Keegan.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's so exciting to have you, and the timing is unbelievable. The movie is just about to come out. The buzz is crazy. We're all waiting for this movie, What the Health, and I have seen it. I'm excited to say, so we can talk about it from that perspective, but I know that our audience, by and large, will not have seen it. And I just want to start talking about kind of a big concept. This movie has a lot going on, and we'll talk about many different threads, but the moving force, the real theme
I think, is really about corruption. And is that too strong a word for the relationship between animal agriculture industry and major health organizations? Or do you think that word kind of nails it?
It nails it. Corruption and collusion, people working together in collaboration. All the C's, conspiracies, and I mean, the whole thing kind of all goes together for sure.
And what is the message you hope, I want to get into the details, but what is the overall message you hope people will come away with?
Really knowledge that even for vegans who maybe kind of like Cowspiracy, people were surprised. Well, after thinking we knew everything, I learned so much in this, and more tools to put in your toolbox that you can share with other people. So everybody knows the truth, and that's the goal of these films, just to share the truth, and so everybody knows. Once you have the truth, that's half the battle.
And as with Cowspiracy, what we're really talking about here, the corruption we're talking about here, involves groups that we're not talking just about the industry. What we're really talking about is groups that people have come to trust. And in Cowspiracy, it was environmental organizations. Here it is health organizations. How much money is flowing from the food industry into these health organizations? And what health organizations are we talking about?
We're talking about tens of millions of dollars coming from food manufacturers and the livestock industry in particular. So you can look at an organization like the American Heart Association, who is receiving millions of dollars from the livestock industry in the form of state livestock boards, from the American meat associations. And then all the way through, you can look at diabetes organizations like the American Diabetes Association, who's receiving an exorbitant amount of money from dairy companies and fast food companies and other processed food manufacturers, all the way through American Cancer Society, Susan G. Komen, a Pink Ribbon campaign. They're all receiving monies from companies who make products that are associated with the cause of the diseases they're supposed to be fighting to prevent.
I guess, I knew a little of this, but your movie really, really brought it home how big this is and how completely compromised the information is that people are receiving. And the interview with the guy from the American Diabetes Association really reminded me of the kind of crazy interviews you got of people for Cowspiracy, which was, it's just amazing. Were you surprised by how devastating that interview was? It just set the scene a little bit for people who haven't seen the movie, but of course they will be seeing the movie, so you don't need to go into detail. But give people a little idea of what happened with this interview.
We were very fortunate to get it because Cowspiracy, it seemed like it was a little bit easier to get these interviews with these organizations other than Greenpeace, who just repeatedly refused. So we were excited to get the interview with the American Diabetes Association. It was right around the time we were learning a lot about how the misconception that sugar is the main culprit of causing diabetes, and it's really saturated fat. And we ran across these studies about how potentially, if not the best way, one of the best ways to reverse and prevent diabetes is through a whole foods, plant-based vegan diet. So at that time, we got an interview with the head of what was the title, Keegan? What did he have?
He's the scientific and medical advisor for the American Diabetes Association.
Like the man to go to. The science behind all this is what's causing the disease. And we had really towards the beginning of the interview, we started talking about diet and disease, and he mentioned little things about common things you hear every day. And then once we started mentioning, immediately, really, we mentioned how about a plant-based vegan diet. We've noticed some studies that have come out that of just phenomenal results with not only preventing but reversing it. And then immediately he started getting very nervous and out of nowhere pretty much stood up and was trying to end the interview. But fortunately, we got to extend the interview a little bit longer. That showed how more bizarre the whole thing is. And it was just, we were so shocked. Probably more than any interview we've ever had. Between this film and Cowspiracy, the most shocked we've been, because it was very early on in the interview, and all we're wanting to do is talk about diet and diabetes. My 12-year-old niece knows that there's a correlation between that. Whether you want to talk about vegan diet or plant food-based diet or whatever, at least we know that diet is related to diabetes, and he just did not want to go there. Really bizarre.
Yeah, I think it was the most shocking was just how emotional and hostile his response was to the question. And that kind of pointed us towards this, there's something deeper going on here. Why would the medical advisor to the American Diabetes Association have such an emotional reaction to a question, about diet and diabetes. And that really kind of triggered the snowball that happens, the audience will see in the film.
Yeah, it is an extraordinary scene. I'll tell you, if this was in a fictional film and you were making a fiction, I would have said that was so overplayed.
There's a few of those in these movies. Even with our case studies, some of them look like they're overplayed or acted, and they're totally real.
Yeah, it was extraordinary. The emotion was just so palpable. And let's talk a little bit about the science that as you point out, he acted as if diet doesn't have anything to do with diabetes. Like we all know. Okay, maybe you can have an argument about whether it's sugar or saturated fat. It's getting harder to make that argument, but maybe you could have that argument. But the idea that diet is not something that we should be talking about. What kind of, they all point to science. What kind of science are these organizations relying on that they can just ignore all of this other science?
It's interesting that there's definitely cherry picking going on, but they're not going to promote science that goes against where they're getting their money from. And so, who's going to get rich off of people eating a whole foods plant-based diet? But people will get rich if you say, hey, continue your lifestyle as normal, but take these pharmaceutical drugs to try and control the symptoms of diabetes. And so, of course, that's what's happening. And maybe that's not the absolute reason why they're promoting these things. I think there's part of it is a belief that people aren't willing to make the changes, but there's been research done that actually shows that people are willing to make these changes, and people are willing to adhere to a plant-based diet to reverse disease better than they are willing to change their diet to something that's not vegan. But I think that's really what it comes down to is the money. Where are they getting their money from? And these same organizations are receiving millions of dollars from pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of unbelievable how completely they're willing to not bring the truth to people. And I used to buy into this idea that it was because they thought, which they say, well, people won't do that. But I still thought, well, tell people, and then it's up to people whether, some of it will do it and some of it won't. But I don't even believe it anymore. I don't even think that's the reason they're doing it. After seeing your movie, I just think they're doing it. This was like a battle between good and evil. It really was. And that's how it came across to me. And one of the evil players here is, as you just pointed out, the pharmaceutical industry. Can you just describe a little about how big the stakes are for the pharmaceutical industry in this information not getting out?
Yeah, the pharmaceutical industry makes literally billions of dollars off of the chronic diseases that exist around the world. And so, if you remove heart disease, we're talking about billions of dollars that are a profit loss to pharmaceutical companies, and they can't allow that to happen. That's their bottom line. They have to make a profit. So I think it's one of the reasons why we see such a massive resistance in mainstream media and from these mainstream health organizations is for that reason. Is, again, no one's getting rich off of promoting a plant-based diet because it's not like there's broccoli farmers who are pushing a hardcore agenda for people to eat more plants. But there is a hardcore agenda to push more pharmaceuticals because it's all about making money. And it goes all the way through that. Not only are they supporting organizations who are supposed to be stopping the diseases they're making billions off of, but it also goes to their support of politicians. The pharmaceutical industry spends more money on lobbying than the oil industry, than the military, than agriculture. Almost it's like almost, I think it's close to 3 times what is the lobbying spent on defense is what goes into lobbying for pharmaceuticals. And
you didn't even really talk about, because it's a little bit of a side issue, but for you in the topic of this movie, but also the pharmaceutical industry is totally bought into the industry because of all of the antibiotics they feed to the farm animals, which is an enormous industry. And so they have their hooks into this goal of keeping this information from people pretty strongly. And I just want to back up a second, because we were talking about diabetes, and I have to say it wasn't until pretty recently that I realized, which one of you referred to, that the main dietary culprit in diabetes was not sugar, that it's fat. Did you realize that before you made the movie? And do you think people know about this?
We didn't. I didn't realize it.
I didn't realize it either.
No, I had no idea. I like everyone, I thought sugar caused diabetes.
Yeah, it was quite surprising. We had a few of those in this film, like Cowspiracy, that we did not know, and that was really surprising. And talk about something that nobody knows of. That the big film that came out the year before was Fed Up, and it's just all about sugar and nothing really about saturated fat other than a few minutes, and kind of off topic, but I don't know about ironically, but Katie Couric, who narrated and produced that film, her husband sadly died of I believe it was colon cancer. It was either colon cancer or prostate cancer, and that is a strong link associated with eating animal products. But we did not know that saturated fat was the real culprit for causing diabetes. And once you have diabetes, yes, you are not supposed to have sugar because the glucose doesn't get where it's supposed to be because the saturated fat is blocking that area.
Yeah, I don't think that's information that people have, and I'm really glad that so much of the film was focused on diabetes, though of course you were focused on heart disease and cancer as well. But the big interview, the mind-blowing interview, was with the diabetes guy. But I'm sure you tried really hard to get some interviews that you didn't end up getting. And did you find it harder to get these interviews than you did when you were making Cowspiracy? And if so, how do you account for that? Did they know you were coming?
I'm not sure. Well, one time, they found our names, but we, sometimes we go over our middle names or do other things and talk about things. But I think that they are a little more prepared and a little bit more wary of anything. So, for example, Susan G. Komen, the Pink Ribbon Campaign, there was a documentary out a few years ago, I think it was just called Pink. And that whole collusion and the corruption that goes on with these industries is a little bit more well-known and in a way talked about, not as much as we do in this film. So they're a little bit more weary, period. It's almost like they knew. Whereas the environmental groups, Cowspiracy, that was the first time anyone's even called them out on it. So it was more difficult. And the same point, we were like, oh man, I wish we had a few more interviews. But to that fact, you see that interview with the American Diabetes Association, it's so powerful. And you see Cowspiracy, you see where these interviews would have gone. And we really wanted to give this a full informational download to everybody, where if you only have 90 minutes, it would have been interesting and funny and bizarre to have a few more of these interviews. But the film is so jam-packed with incredible information, and going to North Carolina interviewing people who live around factory farms that we really wouldn't have time for it anyway. So it really just worked out perfect.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I also think it's very obvious that it was very hard for you to get these in, like people knew that the reason you weren't doing these interviews is because they refused to be interviewed, which has its own power, especially since you did get this one incredible one. And, I do want to go into a lot of the other, because there's a lot more in this movie than just the exposure of corruption. There's also a lot of information, which is great. But unlike a lot of movies in the health realm, there have been other ones, Forks Over Knives and whatever, you don't follow people on their new diets for a long time. But you follow them for like 2 weeks, and you still show unbelievable results. What was it like? How did you find these people, and what was it like interacting with them while they were going through this unbelievable change? And just describe a little bit about what kind of results people were seeing.
It was phenomenal, the results we saw. We followed, for example, this woman, Amy Resnick from Massachusetts, who was suffering from severe asthma, a heart condition, which her physician told her, she was on verge of having a heart attack within the next matter of weeks if she continued her lifestyle as it was. On, I believe 15 or more medications every single day that she was taking, high levels of painkillers because of nerve damage. Just on and on, this litany of debilitating health conditions. And with a matter of just 2 weeks of changing her diet, going 100% plant-based and juicing, primarily juicing, so SOS diets, no added salt, oil, or sugar. She was able to come off all of her medications, including antidepressants, which is just incredible. And then that was just one of them, in just 2 weeks. And then we had just a number of people that we followed who had incredible results. And we were able to connect with those people mainly through the health center, True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California.
It has always been a dream of mine to go to True North. I don't know why, because you don't get to eat there, really. but it is. I just so admire the work that they do.
True North is an amazing group that is an amazing group of physicians and practitioners of many different healing modalities as well. And the results that they have gotten over the course of, I believe it's close to 30 years that they've been operating has been phenomenal. So Dr. Goldhammer, who's featured in the film heavily, is the co-founder of True North Health Center, and I really do feel indebted to them for all the work that they do.
Did you worry at all about overstating the case for plant-based eating, or there's a lot of different kinds of plant-based eating, and it's easy for vegans sometimes to imply that the only thing wrong with people's diets is the presence of animal-based foods, whereas there are unhealthy vegan diets. Did you find it hard to find that balance? I think we all struggle with that all the time.
Yeah, so the earlier cut of What the Health was. There was so much information, and as you asked, were you concerned about overstating it? And we definitely overstated the benefits of a plant-based diet in the original cuts. And as we test screened the film, we refined it more and more. We don't really delve into the oil and salt and added sugars. We address sugar in the film, but one of the biggest culprits, according to the physicians that we interviewed, is simply animal products. That even when people continue their standard diet, but just remove animal products from it, they see incredible results. Now, if someone has a condition like heart disease or type 2 diabetes that they're trying to reverse, well, then absolutely, it's really essential that they, move closer towards, no added salt, oil, or sugar diet, because they'll see even better results. But the biggest culprit is going to be animal products.
Yeah, I think that perfectly reflects the struggle that we all go through in talking about this, that we want to tell people how important this is and how good for them it is without misrepresenting it. But it's a fine line, and I think you tread it well. But it's something I think we always find difficult.
And it's a step-by-step process. It's the first thing, and there are incredible other documentaries out, Forks Over Knives, the recent ones, Eating You Alive, Plant Your Nation. But the thing is that we really want to emphasize the first thing you have to do on this journey is get rid of animal products. So that's why I think our film really goes into how bad dairy is, how bad eating animal products is, these studies that come out in processed meat. And then once you're like, okay, I've gotten this out, I can transition. I don't have to be 100%, no salt, no sugar, unless you have an extreme condition. I can transition this out. And as we all know, being vegan, you go through a journey and then you find out about these other things. And again, with only, a certain amount of time, 90 minutes, we just had to really focus on, okay, what is our message, our most important messages that we want to get out? And that was a big point of it. And as you enlighten to this realization, then you're going to go on the journey. You're going to find out all these things because your whole world lightens up. And we just had only so much amount of time where we didn't really fully dive into the salts, fully dive into the process. Yeah. Because like you said, eating processed, hydrogenated soybean oil and protein isolates, that's not the way to go in long term. But it is good for transition. It helped me transition. Well, I went vegan 9 years ago, and it was a huge part in my transition. And I don't think I could have gone from A to Z from completely whole food. So I think that's important for people to know, that's transitioning from meat and dairy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And it is true that once you go vegan, you just kind of go on this journey of exploring food in a very different way. But I think that your movie, there are other documentaries on this, but the real key to your movie that makes it different and makes it so unbelievably compelling is the story we started off with, the corruption. It doesn't just say this is right. It tells people there's a reason why you think the wrong thing. You have been sold a bill of goods. And I just, with everything that's going on in American politics right now, I guess I was thinking that, is this a bad time for this movie, that it'll get buried because we're all worried about Russia, and that our government is disappearing? Is this going to get lost? But I kind of think that it's just part of that same story. And it's a big story. It's people being lied to, facts versus alternative facts, truth versus lies, decency versus greed. Do you feel that this is like a moment that is really perfect for telling this story?
Oh, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And the whole thing, travel around the world and stuff, talking about Trump, for better or for worse, the whole thing is that America is awake. We've awakened. I feel if it was Hillary, it would have been 4 another years of everybody's asleep, thinking that you know everything when the corruption still lies underneath. This has brought everything to a head, everything that's happening. People now really want to know the truth. They don't want to be taken advantage of or be taken, or you'll see what happens. And so for this film, it's the same thing. It's the perfect timing of everybody now just wants to know the truth. What is going on? Who's being manipulated? Am I being conned by this industry or this politician? And so this perfectly aligns with the most perfect timing for this movement and this, the film and everything. So I think it's such an exciting time that we're living in, and I'm an optimist, but you have to go through these tough times. But we're coming out. I really feel it's looking good.
And I also think that too, what this new regime has done is it's awakening people to the realization that we can't wait for government to change. We can't wait for corporations to change. That it really is going to come down to our own personal choices. And you look at the environmental world right now and how politics is treating the environment, and a vegan diet is even more important now more than ever, because we can't wait for the government to step up. And it's going to be the same thing with our own personal health as well.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. Could you two call me every morning and make me feel better that there's actually some hope? There's one issue about veganism that you don't really deal with directly in the movie, and that, of course, is the issue that our listeners are probably most concerned with, and that's the animal suffering. And there are some shots that make it obvious, and a few people allude to it, but you don't go directly after that. I assume that's deliberate. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's definitely deliberate. One, people know about that, I think, a lot, and I think the big thing is what we do show in the film is the animal cruelty, and you just seeing the animals, for example, towards the end of the film, where you see the dead pig. We talk about cysts in the animals, and it spurts out. It's there's more than one emotion that comes with. One, oh wow, that's an animal that I'm eating. Two, that it's disgusting, so it's a personal level that I can't put this in my body. So it's disgust at more than levels rather than because a lot of people just don't care about other beings or other animals. And that's what's so frustrating about everyone who's an ethical vegan, which is, most of us at the core. But we do care about our health and our loved ones' health. And so, because we're selfish animals at the core if you want to protect yourself, your own body, and your own family. So we didn't really want to focus on that. And there's a time and place for that. And, other movies that address that. So it's definitely purposely kind of left out as much as we did.
Yeah. And we, in turn, what we did, we instead focused on the ethical implications of human animals who have to live near these farms. And so we focus on individuals and communities like Duplin County, North Carolina, who has one of the highest concentrations of industrial pig farm operations in the United States, and the health implications to those people who are forced to live near these farms. And that's something that a lot of health films haven't really talked about. It's all about personal health. It's about what this diet is going to do for me or my family. But we have to look at health, a much bigger picture about what is the health of communities affected by this industry, and what's that impact for the health of this planet. And so that's where the film, again, instead of focusing on animal cruelty, we focus on the human cruelty and really the environmental racism and social injustice that exists around these industries as well.
Yeah, I think sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, a big part of the film, too, when we were at the very beginning, the film was initially going to be called Secondhand Eating, in relation to secondhand smoking and how similar the tobacco industry is. The same thing is happening, and in a positive way, really, in a lot of ways. The same thing is happening with the animal agriculture industry, meat and dairy. We're entering this transition, this paradigm shift where, it's kind of falling apart quickly once the truth is out, but also how what you eat affects someone else. What my health is, that's one person's health, but what true health is when it affects your family and how it affects your community, how it affects the entire planet, other beings. And that's true health. And that was a big thing that we wanted to address in this film, that we see a lot of other health films usually only address personal health, where, with 7 billion people living on this planet, true health is when everything is accounted for.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I do think that, I mean, there's an argument to be made for a movie like this since you did have some footage and a few of your guests alluded to the animal issue. We all struggle with messaging around this issue, but sometimes it's good. It's a good issue to let people draw their own conclusions as long as they have the truth. And hopefully people, as you said, do have more truth about what's happening to the animals. And so, it's hard to know how much to hammer that issue. I think we all struggle with that. But one issue that you certainly didn't hesitate to hammer was health. And we were just talking about the state of the world right now. And one of the things that people are fighting back on and really upset about is the Affordable Care Act and more broadly, the state of healthcare in the United States. Do you have kind of mixed feelings about that whole fight about making our healthcare system available to all when our healthcare system is actually failing so many people?
Oh, definitely. I mean, part of what we were going to have in the film is that we're going to address one of the films in Cowspiracy we addressed is Inconvenient Truth. I saw that film and then, found out other things. With this film, it was going to start off, I saw the film Sicko by Michael Moore. And if anyone's seen that, and he's talking about the affordable health care for everyone, and you look at Michael Moore, he's so unhealthy, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to support that guy. I don't want to pay for, his health insurance or his health when he's doing everything the exact opposite of what he needs to do. So yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting topic where, what really do we need to do and what is right?
Yeah, I really struggle with it.
Yeah, because if we did remove if Americans removed animal products from their diet, the burden that's put on the healthcare system would be, drop dramatically, and we could have universal single-payer healthcare. It would be a very realistic and tangible thing that we could achieve. But at the current state, with how sick Americans are, and largely due in large part to our dietary choices, it doesn't. We're seeing things like Affordable Health Care Act that I think really falls far short of our real ideals of universal healthcare.
Seriously, it's such a weird issue because I go to these rallies and people are very passionate about it, and I get caught up in their passion. But I'm really thinking well, you don't really want that. That's really bad. Could somebody just put me in charge, or maybe put you guys in charge? Could somebody just put us all in charge just for a week? We'll fix everything.
Well, and that's the great thing, though, is that we all are in charge, and we are in charge of what we put into our mouths every day. And except for children who aren't having a choice, we have the choice of what we buy and what we put into our mouths. And so I think it's really about being as conscientious of what we are eating every single day, because it does have effect on our personal health, but it has effect on the government. It has effect on all of us as taxpayers. It has effects on the planet, and clearly has effects on the animals. So we all are empowered, and I think that's my biggest motivation and desire for the film is for people to come away feeling empowered and to remembering that we do have power to control what happens in our lives.
Yeah, especially now, and like you were mentioning before, with all the bad news we hear, is that we really have to realize that we are in the ones in control. We are the ones that have power. And with that being said, we're not, if you have this, oh, woe is me and I can't do anything about it, other people control my life, then that's what it's going to be. But what we need to do is realize that we have control. And I just got back from Israel, and you see this vegan movement happening so fast. And then I travel around, go to Sweden, all these different places, and you see this movement happening so fast, and you have to realize that this is happening fast, and you have to visualize that it's already here. Because if we can't visualize it, it's just like any business project, it's like any art project, anything you're doing. If you can't visualize it, it's not going to happen. And so first you have to literally visualize it and then see what can I do to make us get there. And it's so important. And there's that big, I've been really into this lately, the 10% rule of social change. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they did an experience where 10% of a population just believe in something. It's not even acting. They say it's just believing in something. So let's say 10% of the population believe that we're going to be vegan within 5 years. Just believe it. What happens is that in the rest of the 90%, there's some weird thing that happened, this one universal consciousness that spreads out through that country or that family or whatever that community is. instantaneously. And so first we have to believe that this is happening, and then we can act on it. But it's so important to not get wrapped up in thinking Trump owns our world and that everything's going to shit, because that just puts our power out. And we have to realize that we're the ones who have the power. And that's what the film shows. You have the power in your own health. So it's, I think, a really important part in this movement.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have heard that 10% figure before, and I haven't thought about it in a long time. And it is such a hopeful thing to think about, especially when you're thinking of something that's so positive for people. If 10% of people are living in this very wonderful way, other people are going to start to catch on. But, talking about visualizing it, I just want to bring it back to your movie, because I think that's what I really do think that's what your movie does, especially with your stories of these people who are in such dreadful states. I mean, really, really sick. And their despair is palpable when you first talk to them. And the hope that you see when they start to feel a little better, just after a tiny change, really, I mean, that is visualizing hope right there. And so I think that your movie is a really important part of bringing that to people.
Thank you.
And that's part of the whole addiction. I think part of it is when you're being conned to and that we need these products. True health, beyond we're talking about the universal true health, is just personally, it's mind, body, and spirit. And so when you liberate yourself from this industry, it's like liberating yourself from a horrible relationship you have. And then so all of a sudden your addictions from physically to mental and spiritual all suddenly go away. And that's where you just see the brightness and the light come. It's not just a physical addiction. It's really all three with this industry and these products. So that's why it's just such a powerful transformation you see.
Yeah, and that's beautifully said. And I think you really do see that in the movie. How can people see the movie, and how can they support it?
So March 16th on our website, whatthehealthfilm.com, people will be able to stream the film beginning March 16th. And for the first 4 days that the film is available, we're giving half of all proceeds raised to the organization Food Not Bombs, which is a nonprofit organization that feeds thousands of people healthy vegan meals all around the United States and world, and in a motivation to end poverty and war. And then the other half goes to AUM Films, which is the nonprofit that produced What the Health and Cowspiracy. But you'll be able to watch it for starting March 16th at whatthehealthfilm.com. You'll also be able to get the DVD. You can start organizing community screenings and theatrical screenings on our site through the platform Tug. But there's a easy link right there where people can organize screenings in their community, because that's something we did with Cowspiracy that was really effective, bringing the film to communities that we wouldn't be able to go to ourselves. And then you getting involved. We're going to be rolling out a whole bunch of exciting news in the coming months, but the best place to find all that is whatthehealthfilm.com. That's great, and I'm sure people will be going there, and everybody's going to want to see this movie. So thanks so much for making this movie, and thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for having us on, making it happen.
Our Hen House has a family of podcasts. In addition to the Our Hen House podcast, which you're listening to right now, you can also listen to the Animal Law podcast or the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like what you hear and what's not to like, please leave us a friendly review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us tremendously, because that's how we grow, and that's how we reach more and more people with information on how to change the world for animals. Thanks for listening.
Now let's get into the news. First story is, we have a lot of bad news this week, I'm just warning you. First story is from the Washington Post. It's about wolves in Wyoming. Title of the story is, After Court Ruling, Wolves Could Soon Be Shot on Sight in Wyoming. And this is because of a decision of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. They have stripped wolves of their protections under the Endangered Species Act in Wyoming, and that will be allow them to be hunted as vermin. And they had actually, animal protection organizations had won this in the lower court, but this was a very disappointing decision on appeal. The decision has been stayed pending further appeal, but it doesn't seem likely that it will be overturned. Many of the wolves that could lose their protection live outside Yellowstone, and hunting is prohibited within Yellowstone. And of course, that's where wolves have been reintroduced. And from the very beginning of the reintroduction of wolves back in the day, I mean, it's been going on for a while, after they had been hunted to extinction, basically, in the lower, in the states. The reintroduction was really controversial, not amongst environmentalists so much, but amongst animal people. They said they're just reintroducing them so that they will be killed, and that really does seem to be the case. Our next story is a huge expose by PETA, and we're used to undercover investigations coming out of factory farms, but this is at the University of Pittsburgh laboratories. Uncovered a PETA employee eyewitness, just unbelievable suffering, neglect, and incompetence at the University of Pittsburgh laboratories. You hear about this happening and you think maybe it's things have gotten better, but they just never do. These animals are being mistreated in the most extraordinary ways. Their limbs surgically bent into these unnatural positions to cause them like unending pain. An unsutured wound so deep that it exposed tendons. Experiments that are specifically designed to kill slowly and painfully. Just poor oversight, poor treatment of these animals. Just thank God for these exposés, and I just hope it results in something, but it just doesn't seem to have an effect too often. And our next story is also bad news, and you might have heard of this story. It's really crazy. This is from NPR. Poachers break into French zoo, kill white rhino, and steal his horn. As if poaching wasn't bad enough in Africa, poaching of rhinos, they've actually broken into a zoo in a suburb of Paris and killed. These animals are so vulnerable, and I'm not saying the zoo is not staffed. Apparently, there were plenty of staff on site. There were 5 people who spend the night there, but nothing was found. And they broke in. They killed the rhino. It can't be easy to kill a rhino. I mean, these are enormous animals. He was shot 3 times in the head. His name is Vince. And then they used a chainsaw to cut off one of the horns. They didn't get the other horn. Not sure why. They might have been interrupted or something. And just, of course, the rhino horn is used in Asian medicine, even though it's like total bullshit. And a kilo of rhino horn sold on the black market for nearly $54,000 in 2015. So, they're worth a lot of money, and they're just sitting ducks out there, apparently, even in zoos. People are just unbelievably, horrifically stupid and evil. All right, enough of that. Enough of Mariann's darkness. Our final news, some good news. Saved it for last. This is from Veg News. Guatemala passes groundbreaking anti-cruelty laws. And this is due to a large extent from the work of the Humane Society International, which has worked with the Guatemalan legislature. And these new laws will provide protections to animals in laboratories, circuses, homes, in the wild. Among the specific provisions is a complete ban on animal testing for cosmetics, which is great news. Complete ban on dog fighting, also great news. They're going to be promoting spaying and neutering of companion animals, and then there'll be more regulations, as I said, applying to these animals specifically in these other settings. And this is great news. And apparently HSI is also working with other governments to pass more effective animal cruelty laws. So hooray for Guatemala.
Hello, it's your friendly neighborhood director of communications here, Michael Herron. I'm here with another Flock member spotlight. As you may recall from previous episodes, I'm entertaining my curiosity about what makes our subscriber base, the Flock, tick. What better way than to talk to these generous supporters myself and ask them? So today I'm talking with Claire Madrigal, a passionately vegan nurse from the Washington, D.C. area. Take a listen. What do you do in the D.C. area?
In DC, I work as a nurse, an emergency room nurse. I'm certified in plant-based nutrition, so at every opportunity, I advocate for my patients to, follow a plant-based diet, and I hand out resources, things from Vegan Outreach or Mercy for Animals. I love the African American Starter Guide. It really helps my patients, see it and hold it and actually look at it. They look at the recipes and they get really excited about it.
Do you have pushback from the hospital or anything like that?
No, I don't actually. Last week I spoke at the hospital. We have an area where we can give presentations, and I was asked to give a presentation on plant-based for health. So everyone in the hospital was invited, and I had about 15 people come, and it was really great. I gave a presentation about eating plant-based for health, for the environment. I threw in a little bit of animal things in there, and I had a great reception from, it was mostly healthcare workers, and they were asking about their own diets, and they were really engaged. So it was really, really positive.
Well, how has Our Hen House helped you?
Oh my gosh, I love Our Hen House. I don't even remember how I found it on, looking through podcasts. I was looking for specifically vegan podcasts. And I listen to it every single day on my way to and from work. And it's just really inspiring to hear everybody's stories and to hear, all the work people are doing. And when things get really frustrating and you feel a little bit hopeless sometimes when you see the world is eating meat everywhere you look and family refuses to give up meat and it just gets very hopeless. And so, I turn on the podcast and I just hear about the positive changes that Our Hen House is making and the people that are on the podcast are making. So, it's helped me tremendously to continue to be an advocate for the animals.
What made you decide to join the flock?
Oh, just to support the Hen House and the work you guys do, and hearing about the flock page, that was probably a big factor because, I needed a little bit of extra support. Actually, a couple weeks ago, Mariann read my letter on the air. I told my family that I wouldn't come to Christmas if there would be a dead carcass on the table, and that didn't go over very well. So just having the support from the Our Hen House flock page was really, really helpful.
Thanks again for doing this.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you'd like to become a member of the Our Hen House flock, stop by ourhenhouse.org/donate. And until next time, talk to you soon.
Hi, everybody. This is Jasmine Singer. And another thing that I love about Our Hen House is how lucky I am to be able to sit on this chair, or stool as it were, and be a part of a community that has so many diverse opinions and so many different nuances that formed those opinions, and activists and change makers from all stripes with all different perspectives. And, I myself have changed my perspective so much in the last, 8 years since our podcast started. I'm sure that there are things that I've said or done early on that I never would say or do now. And I'm sure there are things in 8 years that I will say or do that I will never have said or done now. And if you have been listening with regularity, I would imagine you have shifted too, because I don't think it's possible to not shift. I hope that we are all shifting as activists and as people, shifting toward a truth about ourselves and about our world that allows us to get up every morning and feel like we are showing up as truthfully and actively and eagerly as possible. I watched a video this past week that a friend of mine, Robert, shared with me, and I have watched it like 100,000 times since then. And it's a video of an activist, Malachi Garza, speaking about some of these thoughts about inclusivity. And Malachi is currently the director of community justice for it's actually, the Community Justice Network for Youth at the West Hayward Burns Institute. And Malachi has many years of activism under their belt, and they co-founded the Brown Boy Project and that's BOI, in 2006, and is now on their board of directors, and has an incredible amount of activism that I greatly admire. I just wanted to play this little clip that I've been listening to over and over again.
Think about the purity politics of, I won't work with them because they called me the wrong pronoun, or they pulled together this thing and it totally was effed up and didn't work, so they obviously don't know what they're doing. But that it's radically transforming to have to spend years finding the humanity of these people that I considered devilish. And realizing that for them to move, their spirits have to be touched and their humanity has to be tapped. Right? And so people look at me like, oh, they ain't down because they work at Starbucks. I'd be like, you don't know nothing about the revolutionary potential. You don't know a damn thing. Like, there's a way that Alicia and I would say, need everyone in this room. If you're a mechanic, if you're a daycare person, if you're a barista somewhere, if you make pizzas, if you're a school teacher, if you're doing homeless outreach, whatever it is, to own it and claim this movement as yours and to contribute into it, because that's the only way that a flashpoint becomes a tipping point and becomes a new reality, becomes a cultural shift that we can live within. And so if it's something that's othered or seen as theirs, if BLM is not understood as a call in, if Standing Rock is not understood as a call in, then we will fail. So we won't be loving or laughing or nothing without everyone in this room getting down.
So that video was also published on the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts page. I know that I probably should have contacted them to ask if it was okay if I used it, but I really hope it is. If they listen to this, hi, welcome. Anyway, yeah, you don't know nothing about the revolutionary potential. And I could cry. I really could, at how easily we brush others aside. And we are coming from a movement that is based in the foundation of not brushing other individuals aside because we can't hear their voices or because we don't speak their language. And we work that in as the core of why we do what we do. And yet for other activists in our same exact fight, we plug our ears and scream, la, 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 because they did one thing we don't like. And so we disregard them as a whole. And that's not okay. And just as Malachi was saying, if we don't use our movement also as a call in, then we're going to get nowhere. That's one reason why I love my guest today, Ryan Phillips. And I know that you will be right there alongside me on this one, because Ryan he's doing some great work in his community to change the world for animals, and he is really putting himself out there. And not only that, but he's making it very clear that activism does not have to be something that is expensive. You know, it doesn't have to be like we have a nut and we have enough to start a business or a project, but we can actually just do it from where we are no matter what. And he's based in Virginia, and I was actually contacted about him by someone else who had come across his work and was just really passionate and was like, hey, anything you could do to get the word out there about this guy. And I am just so grateful that we connected. And as you listen to my interview with Ryan, who is very well aware of the darkness in the world, pay attention to his lightness, because I've been doing this long enough